Welcome to my channel. In between here and the ocean, episode 1 review. Check it out. Such a beautiful place. I'm gonna focus on the individuals and the participants, their experience. I wish I had this when I was there. It's extremely exhausting, annoying. I would like to explore that with you.
Welcome to the wild.
Welcome to my channel and welcome to Cape Cod. Going up this dune here. Let's check it out. And I will take you guys together with me all the way to the ocean. And meanwhile, in between here and the ocean, we're gonna do the Alone Season 10, Episode 1 review. We're gonna be looking into Lee, Luke, Alan, Cade, and Jody. So follow me. But before we get right into it, just take a quick look where I am. Check it out. Look, all dunes. Such a beautiful place. I'm more or less 20 minutes walking all the way to the beach, and it's a beautiful place. You guys have to come to Cape Cod. It's awesome. So here's how we're gonna do this. I'm gonna hike up, find a sheltered spot from the sun, and we're gonna talk about this episode number 1. But I want to let you know that I'm not gonna be following frame by frame or step by step in a chronological way. I'm gonna focus on the individuals and the participants, their experience, and I'm gonna add my 2 cents to it. If you wanna see it a more thorough, chronological kind of narration of and summary of this first episode, you should go to Alan Tenta, and he's very funny and he makes a great video about it. And then jump back here, subscribe, and follow me in this journey, talking about the individuals and their choices, and giving you my opinion and my 2 cents on that. Okay, so we're gonna hike all the way to this lower area. That's the ocean right there, and this lower area is like a little bit of a wetland with some jack pine kind of pine trees. It's hard to see here, but it's nice and cooler. So we're gonna get there. I'm gonna set up the camera and we're gonna talk. Okay, let's go. Okay, here I am, ready under the shade. Let's talk alone, shall we? So, by the way, I wish I had something like this. I have a remote control that I can stop this video and continue. I wish I had this when I was there, because I gotta tell you, getting up to move your camera, to turn it off, to turn it on, all that, it's extremely exhausting when you're hungry, right? Even when you have a belly full of fish or whatever, it's still annoying to keep moving the camera and getting up. This is actually helpful. I couldn't forget this year. Okay, so let's dive right into it, okay? Luke Olsean. let's talk about his bear. Let's talk about his success on the first like half an hour. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about Lee and his raft, and how you had how he made a watercraft without using any of his items. Let's talk about Jody and her strategy to build a log cabin for long-term survival, and really not just survival but thrival. Is that a word? Thrival? I think it should be thrival. It just sounds right, isn't it? But for thriving long term. Let's talk about Alan and his owl and the potential of that symbol, the potential and the power of that to perhaps his journey. I am watching that, and there's a power into it, you know, uh, that I would like to explore that with you. Um, so who else? Let's talk about Cade and the impact of him losing his quiver with all his arrows. The impact on him, how that would impact him, or anyone for that matter. Also, let's talk about how he handles that. So since I'm talking here, and I don't have a list of paper here, I want to go, follow the participants. So it's 5 participants. So I want to make sure I mention all of them in this opening right now. So we have Luke, you have Lee, you have Cade, Jody, working on her shelter, and she's going for Alan. We're gonna talk about all of them. I would like to start right away with Lucas. That's for I call him Lucas because I'm kind of close to him a little bit. He's my friend. But Luke Olsean. If you do a little bit of research, you're gonna see that his family has been very important in this field of traditional living, survival, and more than that, and beyond. And he is coming to this show with a big. Uh, 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 he's carrying a lot of history with him, right? There's a good amount of pressure right there. But also, he's the kind of guy that wants to adventure and go for it. And as he mentioned, he's a problem solver. So right away, on the first half an hour, he gets a grouse. How do you think that affects you when you're in that kind of situation and that game? After all the anticipation of days of practice and training and studying, how do you think that affects one's mind and spirit? So he gets a grouse right away, and that's so important, because you feel that the land is receiving you. I know a lot of people out there just see this survival thing as some sort of practical thing, very cold-hearted kind of experience. But I gotta tell you, you need to be open to more than that, right? Because when shit hit, like how do you say? When shit hits the fan, um, you need to grasp into something that's beyond just 2 + 2 is 4, and the impact on that bird, like in his spirit and his mood, on in his like start right there, it's huge. It's huge. You feel welcomed, and I imagine that he probably feel some level of welcomeness, and not to you can see also he's in his shelter, and the fire is kind of like uh, uh um sending some like sparks into his sleeping bag, and which was not very good. Um, but that shows one thing. A lot of people online is gonna say, "Oh, that's dumb. How do you make the fire? Where the wind is blowing towards, where you're sleeping, and etc. etc." But that shows one thing, and I gotta tell you, everyone that participate on this survival show, they're not dumb. You have to understand, we study a lot, plus all the experience that we already have. But that scene just shows one thing that you might be missing, the point. That is, how the wind changed directions there. You expect, a lot of wind coming from the north, but you had the south wind as well. And they would switch it up, It's not because we didn't have mountains out there. It's not the wind is sort of like switching, at all moments or different times of the day, or because of the mountains, we'll kind of feel like, move the wind in different ways. We, intersect the wind in different ways and change a little bit. So no, it's like the the movement of the general wind direction in that area. Sometimes they switch from south to north, north to south. Um, and that scene, to me, shows that aspect of that area. Sometimes we focus a lot on the choice that people make, but we forgot to acknowledge the environment. So, but one of the biggest scene and most important scene that I find, when it comes down to Luke, was him, you know, uh, seeing a bear, the big black bear, right? I think he took two shots and missed, and it's in the beginning of this whole journey, right? You think about it, like if he had gotten that bear, right? That's the ticket. Although it was very early and it was quite warm, but that's the ticket, right? Can you imagine that? That's a huge pressure on your system right there. If I get this now, this is the ticket. There's a lot of pressure. And it's hard to judge, like, should I wait and get closer to the bear? Or should I take my chances now? And he took his chance now, right? Instead of the perfect situation, the perfect moment. And he missed the bear. And that was very hard. Now, imagine you, like, how that affect you, right? Um, you feel that you lost a great opportunity, but it's in the beginning of your journey. And if that bear just appeared, you think, hey, I'm going to have this chance again. And we don't know. We don't know. You don't know, right? If you're going to have that again. So that's why you take a shot, and you have to take a shot because you do not know. But in the beginning of the game, if you miss, like he did, it doesn't affect you negatively as much because you know there is great potential. So this episode one, right? He shoots the bear and he misses it. And that's sort of like part of his journey on episode one. Obviously, did you see his fire right away, first night? You see that? Isn't that amazing? Have you read his profile and all the items that he brought? Did you notice that he did not bring a ferro rod? How did he make that fire in that environment? Right? So um, that's a very important thing. He didn't bring a ferro rod and he made a fire. The show didn't really show him creating that fire, in which I think, in my opinion, was a lost opportunity because the only participant not to bring a ferro rod. It'll be interesting, isn't it, to see him, like he building the fire. And I know him, talked a little bit with him about that, and he was very clever. He really figured out a very ingenious way of making a friction fire in that land. And I hope he will share more about that. But I do think that the show missed an opportunity right there. Maybe the show will show, do like a flashback or something like that. I don't know. But I wanted to see, and I want you guys to see as well, him busting that coal. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to Lee. I'm not sure if that's the order in which they appeared in the show, but again, I'm not doing it in chronological order. I'm just going to jump into individual. Let's go to Lee. Lee, I spent a lot of time with him shooting bows shooting arrows. I hope I'm not shooting bows. Shooting arrows at the shooting range at the lodge. And he has a lot of knowledge. He lived off the land. I feel that I have a lot of similarities to him and our experience in life, living truly off grid, off the land, right? And he made this raft.
I think was amazing. And he said, people bring, tarp and item to make a watercraft. I don't understand. You can just make a raft. He actually made me think, and I don't know, if I get out there in some sort of situation like that or experience like that, I would consider actually just making a raft. Um, and he made it very well, very quickly. You know, it seems like that was quickly, and worked just fine. He set up his gill net that he made himself as well, and he catches a pike. What a great success! You see him also building a rod and reel, which, of course, inspired on Clay Hayes' design, which I also did that, and I'm very thankful. Thank you, Clay Hayes. And I did some improvements, Clay Hayes, so I did some improvement on that, and I will show you that later. But also, one thing about Lee, he decides that he's going to build a log cabin. He's getting ready for the winter. He's slim, he doesn't have extra fat, so he needs to really save energy by having a warm shelter. I particularly, my opinion is that, so every time I see someone building a big cabin, I have this feeling that I sort of cringe. It's like, oh my God, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of energy. Of course, never built a log cabin. So if someone, like him has more experience, maybe he's more effective on building it. But every single time I see something like that, I kind of cringe. And, but, I hope all works out good for him. And he knows what he's doing. That's not his first cabin, you know. So we see some successes there. He focused on his, wanting to build a cabin. He built a raft and have some success right there. So let's jump into Jody, working on her shelter, and she's going for it. She's going for a log cabin, and it looks pretty cool. It looks very well done, very well built. Um, and you have to understand that part of her strategy, like she had, I think, 70 pounds above her normal weight. I mean, if when she builds a log cabin, then she's gonna get some food, but she won't need like a ton of food. She's gonna need some food to keep her spirit up, to keep her organs and everything moving, and working properly. But she can do Juan Pablo, of season, if I'm not mistaken, season 9. Um, she can do Juan Pablo style kind of survival because she has the mind and she has the strength, right? And she has the body to do that. Not everyone can do that. It's very hard mentally. I think that is a skill. It's not the most hot skill, you know. We all want to see people thriving and getting fish and like, being creative. But you have to remember that sitting down and doing nothing is an extremely hard skill. I truly believe that. I truly believe that. And some people just cannot function that way. They need to be creative. They need to be moving. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. So that's Jody's kind of journey in that, like building the log cabin, just getting in touch with the environment, making bed with like the moss, the reindeer, what do you call it? Moss, reindeer moss, which you can also eat as food. Um, yeah. So then we have Melanie, in which, as I mentioned before, she did not have a lot of uh, screen time. It's weird, like what's going on? What's the idea behind that, right? And she see all the geese is moving and get even more pumped to finish her shelter. It shows you like a connection to nature, right? Like following the movement around you. You see the geese moving, you know, uh, 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 then the geese moving south, and right. I do not know a lot about geese, but I'm sure they're moving south. That's the sign that the winter is coming, isn't it? And she, yeah, she get going on her shelter and it looks pretty cool. She's putting moss, make sure that's tight, so to hold as much heat as possible. Her shelter looks different. I cannot tell exactly the model, what she's really doing there. And if you know, just put in the comments, really, so we all, learn together here. Her shelter, Anne was the first person that I saw at the airport from this cast of season 10 of Alone. I would look at each other and we were like, "Oh, you Tess, you Anne," and we sort of like had this like we know each other somehow. It was amazing. I really connected to her in the camp as well. Uh, I like her farming style. It reminds me of the way I farm as well. Super hands-on, super like low tech, like really passionate about the earth and about the soil, the life in the soil. You know, uh, she's a farmer, like a strong farmer, right? And very good with her bow, and she know what she's doing, right? And we see her, and we see the job shock, and the job shock is like you're ready for that experience, and then suddenly you're dropped there, and then you're like, holy fuck, this is real, because all throughout you're like, is this a dream, like, but then reality hits you, and you're like, wow, game on, right? That's the name of the first episode, and there she is, and she, I think the show chose that moment with her about the drop shock because something that we all experience. So I think it was a good example. I think she's very funny, has a very interesting sense of humor. She start her shelter right away, and although in this first episode, the show they didn't really show her fishing as much, but upon talking with her, she was really fishing a lot. I mean, you're on a lake, right? Full, there's a lot of fish out there. You have to figure out where the fish exactly are. But everyone's sort of fishing a lot, even though you might not see them fishing that much. Some people fish more than others. Some people get more frustrated faster. But you have to understand that everyone is going for fish. So even if you don't see it, you have to assume that, like, those people are knowing what they're doing. They might not get everything right. They might make mistake or make different decisions. But trust me, we spend a lot of time studying and getting ready for this. We are chosen from 40 fucking thousand people. Okay, stick with us. It's gonna be okay. So it's very cool. And again, I'm doing this just by memory. I didn't, I just watched the episode in like no, it's just like a while ago, and I'm doing it by memory, so I might be missing things. So I'm sorry, you guys, participant, if I missed something there. Okay, I'm just in Cape Cod, on the middle of the woods here. It's just doing by memory. So hang on tight with me. I love you guys. Okay. Let's jump now into what was the other person? I know Alan, but I want to save Alan for last. Um, well, yes, my favorite cowboy of the show Alone, season 10, Cade. Cade. I'm so looking forward for Cade to take me into the Wyoming mountains. Never went there, so I'm really excited for hunting. Or just for fun. Or maybe just to ride a mule. Why not? By the way, check out his YouTube channel. He has a very good video of him riding the mules and talking about the show. I think it's very beautiful, very artistic. And that's him, right? I love that. Uh, he's a big game guide, hunting guide in Wyoming, and he is the best bow and arrow shooter that I have ever met. And he doesn't have a lot of weight to lose. He doesn't believe that this show is a starvation contest, but also he's younger, one of the youngest participants, and he doesn't gain weight that fast anyway. So he really decided to focus where? In his skills, like in his strength. And that's the way to go. When I met him and I was, shooting some arrows with him at the lodge, and he was just like doing whatever he wanted to do with his arrow, man. He's like, I'm gonna shoot the deer's eye just for fun, like the 3D target, and he would shoot, and the thing was just like hit it right there. It's like, I know for a fact that this guy is gonna kill anything that moves in his area. Like, there's no question about it, right? And he had a lot of strategy, right? Fishing, but his main strategy is big game. One, he knows how to track big game. He knows where to be, right? And you can see that he positions himself, call for a moose, a caribou appears. Beautiful caribou. And he was where? On the right place at the right time. That's how a good hunter hunts. A good big game hunter positioned himself. And you can see there. The game was there. He could not take because, he would be committing federal crime and he would not be able to leave Canada after that. So he did not do that because also, none of us was allowed to do that. But then he's faced with he loses his quiver. There's two things there. I lost an arrow. I was doing similar thing that he was doing, hunting, and I lost one arrow. It just fell out of my quiver, and after that, I got like, holy fuck, no way, Jose. Every time I went hunting, I just got 3 arrows, right? 2 big games and 1 small game, or 4 sometimes. But I could have, my quiver it's attached, it's latched to it because I have another bow and arrow, and it was one that you kind of fit in, inside of the arrow. And the thing is, with the humidity oscillation, the wood can shrink or expand, and then your quiver falls. But you can see, man, that his main tool to procure food was lost. Right? You can see how that hurt him so much. You can follow him through his, journey in that moment. You have to imagine that. How do you feel in that moment, right? He was like, "Fuck," right? I cannot even describe how I would feel. Like, I feel dumb. I feel lost. I would feel like sad, disappointed, frustrated, wanting to explode, right? Because everything it came down to that sucks. And you can see him by the end of the episode picking himself up and say, we're not gonna give up. We're gonna fight this fucking thing to the last breath. You can follow that journey of him like sinking deep and coming up with that gut feeling of like, we gonna fight. We gonna fight. And that's an incredible thing, right? It's an incredible thing. This is why we love this show alone. Because you can relate to that feeling, with the desire to have that feeling, the need to have that feeling, the power of a human will to overcome challenge. And he just displays that for us right there, with the most honest and direct way that a human can be. Now, let's just jump to Alan, right? Talking about human feeling and connection. Let's jump to Alan. Alan is funny. When I met him at the lodge, I didn't know how funny he was until I started watching stuff from him, and he's like, "Son of a gun, you're ridiculous, right?" He's like a funny, I don't know, high school teacher or something, like middle school teacher, like this humor that I love it. And the main thing for him there, of course, we see him like naked, almost naked, like swimming on the lake, just showing like the pleasure and of being there, of testing the waters, quite literally. But the main thing really about Alan in this first episode is the owl. There's a whole meaning about that owl for him, and reminds him of his father, and one of the last things that his mother talked to him about that. And you should watch that episode very carefully, because my background is in theater directing. Like I did that for like, I don't know, almost a decade before I came to the US 10 years ago. Then I came here, stopped doing that because I didn't speak any English. So, but that's not the point right here. The point is, I recognize, and you should too, when a scene is chosen. First of all, it's a beautiful scene. It's hard to not edit that into the show. But you can see how that affects him in some deep way. Very, very similar in a way to Luke's getting the grouse right away. It's different because in Alan's case, there is a even more personal and deep way, and not so abstract like the land is receiving me and welcoming me, which is very good. But Alan had like a deep personal thing, very hard to, to oversee, very hard to ignore. And there's something deep about that, and the land receiving him in such a spiritual way. And he mentioned like, I'm not that spiritual, but like, oh my God, it's in my face. Even if I want to ignore, I can't ignore the meaningfulness of this hour. And of course, the way that they show the first episode wraps is with Cade, right? And but it's a beautiful, this first episode is like introducing the five character and survivalists, their struggles, success, their connections, right? And yeah, it's game on. All right, so stick around, subscribe, okay? And I'm gonna be posting more reviews. Matter of fact, you might be seeing somewhere here the next review that I'm gonna post of episode 1, and I'm gonna do actually right now. Just click right there or right here, but mostly here. Click right here, and I see you in just a second. Welcome to the wild.
Welcome to the wild.